The colony ship Horizon's Edge had been traveling through space for 3 years. Inside its metal walls, 200 people lived and worked, all searching for new worlds that humans could call home. Jake Martinez spent most of his time in the hydroponics bay, a large room filled with plants growing under bright artificial lights. He was responsible for keeping everyone fed, and he took his job seriously. Jake was 28 years old, with dark hair that always seemed a bit too long, and hands that carried the stains of soil no matter how much he washed them. He liked the quiet of the hydroponics bay. While others complained about the endless journey through the void, Jake found peace among the tomato vines and lettuce beds. Plants did not care about the darkness outside the ship. They just grew. The ship needed repairs. 3 years of constant travel had worn down the engines, and the captain decided to stop at a Velari space station. The Velari were an old race, far older than humans. They had been traveling between stars when Earth was still figuring out how to make fire. Their station hung in orbit around a blue giant star, a massive structure of silver metal and crystal that made the Horizon's Edge look like a toy. Jake did not plan to leave the ship. He had work to do, plants to tend, systems to check, but his friend Danny convinced him otherwise. "Come on, man," Danny said, leaning against the doorway of the hydroponics bay. "We might never get another chance to see a Velari station. Don't you want to see what a civilization that's 10,000 years old looks like?" Jake looked at his tomato plants. They would be fine for a few hours. The station was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. The corridors were wide and tall, the ceilings so high they seemed to disappear into shadow. Strange lights floated in the air without any visible source, casting everything in a soft glow. The air smelled clean, almost sterile, with a faint hint of something sweet he could not identify. Velari walked past them, tall and slim with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer slightly in the light. Their eyes were silver, reflective like mirrors, and their movements were graceful in a way that made humans look clumsy. Most of them ignored the human visitors, going about their business with calm efficiency. Danny wanted to find the entertainment district. Jake wanted to find the botanical gardens. They split up with plans to meet back at the docking port in 4 hours. Jake found the gardens on the upper levels of the station. The entrance was a simple archway, but beyond it lay a space that took his breath away. Plants from dozens of worlds grew together in careful arrangements. Some had leaves that glowed with their own light. Others had flowers that seemed to shift colors as he watched. The air was thick with humidity and the smell of growing things. He walked the path slowly, stopping to examine each plant, trying to understand how they were arranged and cared for. He was so focused on a bush with silver leaves that he did not notice someone approaching until she spoke. "Those are from Velara Prime. They only grow in moonlight." Jake turned and found himself looking at a Velari woman. She was young, or at least appeared young. It was hard to tell with Velari. She had the same pale blue skin and silver eyes as the others, but something about her expression was different. Curious. Open. "How do you grow them here?" Jake asked. "There's no moon," she smiled. "We use special lights that match the wavelength. It's not perfect, but they survive." She tilted her head slightly. "You're human." "From the colony ship?" "Yeah, I'm Jake. I work in hydroponics, growing food mostly." "I'm Lyra. I work as a cultural liaison. I help visitors understand our station and our people." She stepped closer to the silver-leafed bush. "Do you enjoy gardening?" "More than anything," Jake said, and he meant it. They talked for 2 hours. Lyra showed him plants from worlds he had never heard of, and explained the principles of Velari agriculture. Jake told her about Earth, about the forests and jungles and fields that covered his home world. He pulled up pictures on his datapad, and Lyra stared at them with something like hunger in her silver eyes. "Your world is so green," she said quietly, "so alive. Velara Prime is beautiful, but it's orderly. Controlled, everything in its place. This..." She gestured at a picture of an Earth rainforest. "This is wild. Free. You should see it someday," Jake said. Lyra looked at him, and something passed between them in that moment. Understanding, maybe. Or recognition. "I would like that," she said. Jake missed his meeting time with Danny by 3 hours. He did not care. He and Lyra walked through the station, talking about everything and nothing. She showed him the observation decks where you could watch the blue giant star burn. He told her stories about growing up in California, about learning to surf, about the smell of orange groves in summer. They met again the next day, and the day after that. The Horizon's Edge was scheduled to stay docked for 3 weeks while the engineers completed repairs. Jake spent every free moment with Lyra. They explored the station together, shared meals, taught each other games from their respective cultures. Lyra explained that Velari society was based on logic and reason. Emotions were considered important but secondary to rational thought. Families were arranged for genetic compatibility. Relationships were planned and approved by councils. It all sounded cold to Jake, but Lyra spoke of it matter-of-factly, as if she had never known anything different. "Don't you ever want to just do something because it feels right?" Jake asked one evening. They were sitting in an observation lounge, watching ships come and go from the docking ports. Lyra was quiet for a long moment. "Sometimes," she finally said. "But wanting something and doing it are different things." "Not always," Jake said. She looked at him, her silver eyes catching the light. "What do you mean?" "Sometimes the best things happen when you stop thinking so much and just feel." The air between them felt charged. Jake could hear his own heartbeat. Lyra's face was unreadable, but she did not look away. "Your people are very different from mine," she said softly. "Is that a bad thing?" "No, it's interesting." The 3rd week arrived too quickly. Jake found himself dreading the departure date. He had not expected this. Had not expected to meet someone who made him laugh, who listened when he talked about soil pH and nitrogen cycles, who looked at pictures of Earth with wonder in her eyes. On their last night before the Horizon's Edge was scheduled to leave, Lyra took him to her quarters. They were small but comfortable, decorated with plants she had collected from various worlds. They sat on her couch and talked until the words ran out, and then Jake kissed her. She kissed him back. Her skin was cooler than human skin, her lips soft. She tasted like the sweet smell that permeated the station. When they pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard. "This is not logical," Lyra whispered. "No," Jake agreed. "It's not. My people would say this is foolish, probably." She smiled then, a real smile that reached her eyes. "I don't care." They spent the night together, and in the morning Jake had to return to the ship. They stood at the docking port, holding hands, neither wanting to let go. "The medical officer said it's impossible for our species to have children," Lyra said. "Different biology, incompatible." Jake nodded. They had asked just to be safe. The answer had been definitive. Humans and Velari could not produce offspring. It was biologically impossible. "I'll message you," Jake said. "Every day. I'll answer," Lyra promised. They kissed one more time, and then Jake walked through the airlock. He looked back once and saw Lyra standing there, her hand raised in farewell. Then the door closed between them. The Horizon's Edge pulled away from the station and jumped to faster than light speed. Jake stood in the hydroponics bay, his hands in the soil, and tried not to think about silver eyes and a smile that had changed everything. 2 months passed like a dream for Lyra. She went to work each day at the Cultural Liaison Office, helped visitors navigate the station, and maintained her duties with the efficiency expected of all Velari. But at night she read Jake's messages and wrote back, telling him about her day, asking about his plants, sharing small pieces of her life that felt too big to keep inside. Then the sickness started. At first, Lyra thought she had caught something from one of the alien visitors. The station hosted dozens of species, and sometimes diseases jumped between them, despite all the medical protocols. She felt tired all the time, a bone-deep exhaustion that sleep did not fix. Food tasted wrong. The sweet smell of the station that she had never noticed before suddenly made her stomach turn. She ignored it for a week. Velari were rarely sick, their immune systems efficient and strong. Whatever this was would pass. It did not pass. It got worse. On the 8th day, Lyra woke up and barely made it to the bathroom before vomiting. She knelt on the cool floor shaking, wondering what was wrong with her. When she finally felt steady enough to stand, she looked at herself in the mirror. Her skin, normally a healthy pale blue, looked dull. Dark circles shadowed her silver eyes. She went to the medical center. The medical center was a quiet place of white walls and soft lighting. A Velari physician named Kale examined her, running a scanner over her body while asking questions in a calm, measured voice. "When did the symptoms begin?" "About 8 days ago." "Have you been exposed to any unusual substances or environments?" "No, just my normal duties." Have you traveled off-station recently? Not in the past 2 months. Kale frowned at the scanner readings. He ran it again, slower this time, focusing on her abdomen. His silver eyes widened slightly, which for a Velari was the equivalent of a human gasping in shock. This cannot be correct, he said quietly. What is it? Lyra felt her heart begin to race. Kale did not answer. He called in 2 more physicians. They huddled around the scanner, speaking in low voices that Lyra could not quite hear. She saw one of them shake her head. Another checked the equipment as if it might be malfunctioning. Finally, Kale turned to her. His face was carefully neutral, but Lyra could see the confusion in his eyes. Lyra, you are pregnant. The words did not make sense at first. Lyra stared at him, waiting for the rest of the explanation, the part where he told her what was really wrong. That's impossible, she said. I have not been with anyone. She stopped. That was not true. She had been with Jake. But Jake was human, and humans and Velari could not have children together. Every medical professional agreed on that fact. It was basic biology. Have you had intimate contact with anyone in the past 2 months? Kale asked gently. Lyra's mouth felt dry. A human. From the colony ship. But we were told it was impossible. The medical officer confirmed it. The 3 physicians exchanged glances. One of them, an older female named Sarah, spoke carefully. In all recorded history, there has never been a successful human-Velari hybrid. The genetic structures are too different. Our reproductive systems should not be compatible. Should not, Lyra repeated. But I am pregnant? Yes, Kale said. The scans are clear. There is a developing fetus in your womb. Based on the growth rate, conception occurred approximately 8 weeks ago. The room seemed to tilt. Lyra gripped the edge of the examination table. How is this possible? We don't know, Sarah admitted. We need to run more tests. This is unprecedented. Over the next 3 days, Lyra became a medical curiosity. Physicians from all over the station came to examine her. They took blood samples, tissue samples, ran scan after scan. They spoke about her in clinical terms as if she were not sitting right there listening. The scans showed something that should not exist. The fetus had DNA from both species. Human chromosomes and Velari chromosomes had somehow combined, creating a genetic pattern that no one had ever seen before. The cells were dividing and growing, following neither human nor Velari developmental patterns, but something entirely new. News spread through the Velari medical community like fire through dry grass. Within a week, the Council of Elders knew. They called Lyra before them. The council chamber was a vast circular room at the heart of the station. 12 elders sat in a semicircle, all of them ancient by any standard. Their blue skin faded almost to white. They looked at Lyra with expressions that ranged from curiosity to barely concealed disgust. The head elder, a male named Torin whose silver eyes seemed to see through everything, spoke first. Lyra, you understand the gravity of this situation. It was not a question, but Lyra answered anyway. Yes, elder. In 10,000 years of Velari history, we have encountered hundreds of species. We have formed alliances, shared knowledge, and lived in peace with many of them. But we have remained pure. Our genetic line has never been compromised. Lyra felt something cold settle in her stomach. Compromised? Cross-species reproduction is an abomination, another elder said, a female whose name Lyra did not know. It goes against the natural order. The child you carry is not meant to exist. The child did not ask to exist, Lyra said quietly. Neither did I ask for this. We were told it was impossible. And yet here we are, Torin said. The medical team has expressed concerns about your health. The hybrid is growing at an accelerated rate. Its biology is unknown. It could be dangerous to you. Or it could be fine, Lyra said, though she did not feel convinced. We cannot take that risk, the female elder said. We recommend immediate termination of the pregnancy. The word hung in the air like a stone. Termination. They wanted her to kill the child growing inside her. No, Lyra said. Torin leaned forward. This is not a request, Lyra. This is for your own safety and the safety of our people. We do not know what this hybrid might become. It's a baby, Lyra said, her voice shaking. Just a baby. It's an unknown variable, another elder said coldly. And unknown variables are dangerous, Lyra stood up. I will not terminate my pregnancy. You cannot make me. We can, Torin said quietly. But we would prefer not to. Think carefully about this, Lyra. Think about your future, your place in our society. Think about the risk you are taking. They dismissed her. Lyra left the council chamber on shaking legs and went straight to her quarters. She locked the door and sat on her bed, her hands pressed against her stomach. There was nothing to feel yet, no movement, no sign of the life growing there except the medical scans and her constant nausea. She pulled up her communication device and composed a message to Jake. Her fingers shook as she typed. Jake, something happened. Something impossible. I'm pregnant. The doctors say it's yours. They say it should not exist, but it does. I'm scared. The council wants me to terminate it. I don't know what to do. Please, I need you. She sent the message and waited. But Jake was on the horizon's edge, weeks away at faster than light speeds. Even if he got the message immediately, even if he responded right away, it would take days for his reply to reach her. Lyra lay down on her bed and stared at the ceiling. She thought about the child inside her, half human and half Velari. She thought about Jake's hands, always stained with soil, and the way he smiled when he talked about his plants. She thought about the night they spent together and how right it had felt despite everything. The medical team scheduled another examination for the following morning. Lyra went because she had no choice. They ran more scans, took more samples, discussed her condition in voices that were meant to be too quiet for her to hear, but that she caught. Anyway, the growth rate is concerning. The cellular structure is completely unprecedented. If it continues at this pace, the pregnancy could be dangerous. We should recommend termination again. Lyra closed her eyes and tried to block out their voices. She thought about Jake's last message sent 3 days ago before she had told him. He had written about the new seeds he was testing, about a type of bean that grew in low light, normal things, safe things. She wondered if he would still want her when he knew, if he would be scared like the doctors were, if he would think the child was a mistake. That night she stood in front of her mirror and lifted her shirt. Her stomach was slightly swollen, more than it should be at only 8 weeks. The hybrid was growing fast, the doctors said. Too fast. Lyra pressed her hand against the small swell and tried to feel something. Anything. But there was only silence. I don't know what you are, she whispered to her reflection. I don't know if you're more like me or more like your father. I don't know if you'll be healthy or if you'll survive. Everyone is scared of you. She paused, her throat tight. I'm scared too. A response from Jake finally came 4 days later. Lyra was at work when her device buzzed. She excused herself and went to a private room to read it. Lyra, I'm coming. I don't know how yet, but I'm coming. Don't let them make you do anything you don't want to do. That's our child, ours. I don't care what anyone says is impossible. I love you. Hold on. Lyra read the message 3 times. Then she sat down and cried. Not from fear this time, but from relief. She was not alone. Whatever happened, whatever this child was, she was not alone. The pregnancy progressed with frightening speed. By the 10th week, Lyra looked like a Velari woman at 20 weeks. Her stomach swelled larger each day, visible proof of the impossible thing growing inside her. The medical team met daily to discuss her case, and each report brought more concern and less comfort. Dr. Kale called her in for an examination every 3 days now. Lyra sat on the cold table while he ran scanners over her body, his face carefully blank as he recorded the data. The fetus has grown 30% since your last visit, he said, not looking at her. That was 3 days ago. Is that bad? Lyra asked, though she knew the answer. It's unprecedented. We have no framework for understanding this rate of development. He finally met her eyes. Lyra, you need to seriously consider the council's recommendation. You mean kill my baby? Kyle flinched at her blunt words. Terminate the pregnancy before it becomes dangerous to you. Yes. When will you stop calling it a pregnancy and start calling it what it is? A baby. My child. It's not a Velari child, another doctor said from across the room. Her name was Vera, and she made no effort to hide her disapproval. It's a hybrid. An anomaly. We have no idea if it will even be viable once born. If I live that long, Lyra said bitterly. Precisely, Vera replied. Lyra left the medical center feeling hollow. She went to work at the cultural liaison office, but her supervisor met her at the door. Lyra, the council has requested that you take a leave of absence. Why? I can still work. Her supervisor, a middle-aged Velari male named Joran, who had always been kind to her, looked uncomfortable. Your presence is disturbing the visitors. Word has spread about your condition. Some of the other species find it unsettling. Unsettling, Lyra repeated flatly. I'm sorry, it's not my decision. Take the leave, rest, focus on your health, he paused. Whatever you decide, Lyra understood. They wanted her out of sight while she made her choice. Keep the baby or destroy it. Live with the shame or end it before anyone had to acknowledge its existence. She went home. The days blurred together after that. Lyra stayed in her small quarters, leaving only for medical appointments or to buy food. Her friends stopped visiting. At first she thought they were just busy. Then she realized they were avoiding her. One friend, Mira, finally admitted it when Lyra confronted her in the hallway. I'm sorry, Lyra. I want to support you, but my family forbids it. They say what you did is wrong. That you're bringing shame to our people. I fell in love with someone, Lyra said. That's not wrong. He's not Velari. Mira looked pained. You have to understand. This goes against everything we believe. Our genetic purity has been maintained for thousands of years. And now you're carrying a hybrid child. People are scared of what, a baby? Of what it represents, change, the unknown. The breaking of our most sacred traditions. Mira hurried away before Lyra could respond. Lyra stood in the empty hallway and felt the weight of isolation settle over her like a heavy blanket. Jake sent messages every day. Lyra read them during the long nights when sleep would not come. He talked about fighting with his captain to return to the station. He talked about researching human pregnancy, gathering information that might help her. He told her he loved her and that they would face this together. But he was not there. He was weeks away and Lyra was alone. The council summoned her again in her 14th week of pregnancy. Lyra wore loose clothing that did nothing to hide her swollen belly. She walked through the station corridors and felt eyes on her. People stared, some with curiosity, others with barely concealed disgust. Children pointed before their parents hurried them away. Elder Torin looked older than before, his face lined with displeasure. You have refused our recommendation, he said without preamble. Yes. The medical team reports that the hybrid is continuing to grow at an accelerated rate. It now appears to be developing faster than either human or Velari gestations. They estimate you will give birth in approximately 8 more weeks. That's impossibly fast, Lyra said. Everything about this situation is impossible. That's precisely the problem. Torin leaned forward. Lyra, I will be direct. If you continue this pregnancy, you are putting yourself at significant risk. The medical team cannot predict what will happen during the birth. They have no experience with hybrid physiology. You could die. The words should have scared her more than they did. Maybe she was too tired to be scared. Maybe she had already accepted that possibility. I could die crossing the street, Lyra said. I could die in a shuttle accident. I could die from a disease. Life is risk. This is not the same. It is to me. Another elder spoke up, a female with ice in her voice. You are being selfish. Think of your contribution to our society. Think of the proper children you could bear in the future with an appropriate Velari mate. I don't want an appropriate Velari mate. I want Jake, and I want this baby. Then you are a fool, the elder snapped. Enough, Torin said. He looked at Lyra with something that might have been pity. We cannot force you to terminate the pregnancy. But understand this. If you continue, you will receive only the minimum medical care required by law. You will not be welcomed back to your position. Your status in our society will be severely diminished. You will carry the mark of this choice for the rest of your life. I understand, Lyra said. Do you? Do you truly understand what you are giving up? Your career, your reputation, your standing in the community. All for a hybrid child that may not even survive. Lyra stood up. She was tired of these meetings. Tired of their cold logic, tired of being treated like a problem to be solved. I understand that I love my child. That's enough. She left the council chamber and did not look back. The medical appointments became shorter and colder. The doctors spoke to her only when necessary. They ran their scans, recorded their data, and dismissed her with minimal explanation. Lyra learned to read the displays herself, teaching herself the medical terminology so she could understand what was happening to her body. The hybrid was healthy, as far as anyone could tell. Its heart beat strong and steady. Its limbs were forming properly. The scan showed it moving inside her, though Lyra could not feel it yet. The doctors said that was normal for this stage, but their tone suggested nothing about this pregnancy was normal. Jake finally secured emergency leave from his captain. His message arrived when Lyra was 16 weeks pregnant and looked like she might be ready to give birth any day. I'm coming. The ship is heading to the nearest jump point. I'll catch a transport from there to your station. It will take me 10 days. I'm sorry it's so long. Hold on, Lyra, please just hold on. 10 days felt like forever. Lyra counted them down, marking each one as it passed. She spent her time in her quarters, reading everything she could find about human pregnancy, trying to understand what her body was going through. The information was confusing and often contradictory. Human pregnancies lasted 9 months. Velari pregnancies lasted 11 months. Hers was racing forward at triple speed, and no one knew why. She stood in front of her mirror one night, her shirt pulled up to expose her distended belly. Her skin was stretched tight, marked with faint lines that the doctors said were normal. Her body was changing in ways that frightened her. She looked alien to herself, no longer quite Velari, but not human either. Something in between. What are you doing to me? She whispered to the silent swell of her stomach. There was no answer. There never was. The nightmares started around week 17. Lyra dreamed of giving birth to something monstrous, something that was neither human nor Velari, but a twisted combination of both. She dreamed of dying on the medical table, while doctors stood by and watched with cold scientific interest. She dreamed of holding a dead baby, its eyes open but seeing nothing. She woke from these dreams gasping, covered in sweat, her heart racing. The darkness of her quarters felt suffocating. She wanted Jake there to tell her it would be okay. She wanted someone, anyone, to tell her she was not making a terrible mistake. But she was alone. With her fear and her growing belly and the weight of everyone's disapproval, Dr. Kale called her in for an urgent examination during week 18. When Lyra arrived, she found not just Kale but 5 other doctors waiting for her. They surrounded her with scanners, their faces grave. What's wrong? Lyra asked, fear spiking through her. The fetus has reached full-term development, Kale said. By both human and Velari standards, it is ready to be born. But I'm only 18 weeks along. We're aware. Your body may go into labor at any time. We need to prepare for delivery. Jake isn't here yet. He's still 3 days away. The doctors exchanged glances. Lyra, biology does not wait for convenience. If labor begins, we must be ready. We've prepared a delivery room and assembled a team. We'll do everything we can, but you need to understand the risks. Tell me, Lyra said, though she was not sure she wanted to know. Kale's voice was clinically neutral. The hybrid size and growth rate may cause complications during delivery. Your body may not be able to handle the strain. There could be excessive bleeding, organ damage, or other life-threatening complications. We have no precedent for this. We will be making decisions in real time based on circumstances we cannot predict. You're saying I might die? Yes. The word hung in the air between them. Lyra put her hands on her belly, feeling the tight stretch of her skin, the solid mass of the child inside her. Somewhere in there was a being that was half her and half Jake, a new life that had never existed before, a baby that everyone called impossible. Do what you can, Lyra said quietly. Save us both if possible. But if you have to choose, save the baby. Lyra, we cannot save the baby, she repeated firmly. That's my choice. My decision. You said I have the right to make decisions about my own medical care. This is my decision. The doctors looked uncomfortable, but they nodded. They made notes on their data pads and discussed preparations in low voices. Lyra sat on the examination table and stared at nothing, her mind strangely calm. She was ready. Whatever happened next, she was ready. That night, she sent a message to Jake. They say the baby is full term. I might go into labor any day. I'm scared, Jake. I'm so scared. But I made my choice. If something happens to me, promise you'll take care of our child. Promise you'll tell them about me, about us, about how we met. Don't let them think they were a mistake. They're not a mistake. They're a miracle. She hit send and then lay down on her bed, her hands on her stomach, waiting for morning or labor or whatever came next. Jake would arrive in 2 days. Lyra held on to that thought like a lifeline. 2 days, 48 hours. Then she would not be alone anymore. Then someone would be there who did not look at her with fear or disgust or clinical detachment. Someone who loved her. She moved through her apartment slowly, her body heavy and awkward. Everything was difficult now. Sitting down, standing up, reaching for things on high shelves. Her back ached constantly. Her feet were swollen. She had stopped looking in mirrors because the reflection was too strange, too alien. The medical team had scheduled another meeting for tomorrow morning. Lyra already knew what they would say. More warnings. More statistics about risk and danger. More cold. Logical reasons why she should have terminated the pregnancy months ago. She was tired of their words. Tired of defending her choice. Tired of everything. She sat in her small living area, surrounded by the plants Jake had taught her to appreciate. A small fern from Earth that she had bought from a trader. A flowering vine from one of the outer colonies. They were supposed to bring her comfort. A connection to Jake and to the life they might have had together under different circumstances. But tonight they just reminded her of how far apart they were. Her datapad showed the latest medical report. Lyra had learned to read the technical language by now. The hybrid was measuring at full human term. 9 months of development compressed into 4.5 months of actual time. The growth rate was finally slowing, the doctor said. But that just meant the baby could be born any day now. Any day. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe in an hour. Her body was a stranger to her, controlled by forces she did not understand. Lyra pulled up the report details, scanning through the numbers and charts. Fetal heart rate strong and steady. Size measurements. All within acceptable ranges for a full-term infant. Position head down and engaged. Everything was ready for birth except that Jake was not here yet, and Lyra was not sure she was brave enough to do this alone. She set the datapad aside and leaned back against the couch, closing her eyes. Exhaustion pulled at her, but she could not sleep. Every time she tried, she either had nightmares or woke up with painful cramps that the doctor said were normal practice contractions. Her body preparing for what was coming. "I wish I knew what you were," she said quietly to her belly. "Are you more like me? Will you have silver eyes? Or are you more like your father? Will you have his smile?" Silence answered her. It always did. The baby never moved. The doctor said that was unusual. Most babies at this stage were active, kicking and rolling and responding to external stimuli. But the hybrid was still silent, giving no indication of its presence except for the steady heartbeat on the monitors and the impossible swell of Lyra's abdomen. Sometimes, late at night like this, Lyra wondered if the doctors were right. If the baby was wrong somehow, broken, maybe it would be born dead, all her suffering and fear for nothing. Maybe she was carrying around a corpse too stubborn to admit that impossible things should stay impossible. She pushed those thoughts away. They did not help. Nothing helped except waiting for Jake and hoping that when labor started, she would survive it. Tomorrow she had to go back to the medical center for yet another examination. Tomorrow the doctors would probe and scan and discuss her condition like she was not even there. Tomorrow the weight of everyone's judgment would press down on her again. But tonight, for just a little while, she could sit in her quiet apartment and pretend everything was normal. Lyra opened her eyes and looked at the datapad again. She should sleep. She needed rest. But her mind would not quiet. She pulled up Jake's last message and read it for the 100th time. Almost there. One more jump and then a transport shuttle to the station. "I'm bringing medical texts from Earth. Information about human births that might help. The captain gave me access to the ship's entire medical library. We'll figure this out together. I love you. Stay strong, stay strong." Easy words when you were not the one carrying an impossible child. When your body was not changing in terrifying ways. When you were not lying awake at night wondering if you would die giving birth. But Lyra knew Jake was trying. He had fought his captain to get leave. He had spent every free moment researching and gathering information. He was doing everything he could from millions of miles away. It was not his fault that space was vast and ships could only go so fast. She put her hand on her belly, feeling the tight stretch of skin. "Your father is coming," she told the silent baby. "He wants to meet you. He wants to know you." She paused. "I want to know you too. I wish you would move just once, just so I know you're really in there." Nothing. Lyra sighed and reached for the datapad again. She should review the medical texts Jake had sent. She should prepare herself for what was coming. She should do 1,000 productive things. Instead, she just sat there, hand on her belly, staring at nothing. The medical report was still open on her datapad. Lyra glanced at it, her eyes tracking over the familiar charts and numbers. Then something caught her attention. A note at the bottom of the report. Fetal movement minimal to none observed. Recommend continuous monitoring. Minimal to none. 4.5 months pregnant with a full-term baby and it barely moved. The doctors had mentioned it before, but seeing it written there in cold clinical language made it real. Made it scary in a way the verbal warnings had not. What if something was wrong? What if the baby was not moving because it could not move? What if the hybrid body was malformed in ways the scans could not detect? Lyra felt her breath quicken. Her heart raced. All the fear she had been pushing down for months rose up and threatened to drown her. She put both hands on her belly, pressing gently, trying to provoke some response. "Please move," she whispered. "Please, I need to know you're okay." Still nothing. Tears began to fall. Lyra did not try to stop them. She cried for all the things she had lost. Her job, her friends, her place in society. She cried for the fear that lived in her chest like a stone. She cried for Jake so far away and trying so hard to reach her. She cried for the baby that might be dying inside her while she sat helpless. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry. Maybe they were right. Maybe I should have listened. Maybe you were never meant to exist. Maybe I'm killing us both because I'm too stubborn to admit I was wrong." Her data pad buzzed. Another message from Jake. Lyra wiped her eyes and opened it, desperate for anything that might make her feel less alone. "I know you're scared. I'm scared too. But Lyra, we created something amazing. Something that was supposed to be impossible. That has to mean something. That has to count for something. Trust yourself. Trust our baby. Trust that love can bridge even the distance between our species. I believe in you. I believe in us." Lyra read the message 3 times. Then she set the datapad down and pressed both hands against her belly again. "Your father believes in you," she said softly. "I want to believe too. Please just give me a sign. Anything." She held her breath and waited. For a long moment, nothing happened. Lyra was about to pull her hands away when she felt it. A flutter. Light, so light she almost thought she imagined it. Then it came again. Stronger this time. A definite movement, a push from inside. The baby was moving, Lyra gasped. Her hands pressed firmer against her belly, searching for more. And there it was. Another movement. And another. Not the violent kicks the medical text described, but gentle nudges as if the baby was stretching, testing its boundaries. "Oh," Lyra breathed. "Oh, you're there. You're really there." The baby moved again, a roll that Lyra could see as well as feel, a ripple across the surface of her belly. It was the most beautiful thing she had ever experienced. Tears fell again, but these were different. These were relief and joy and wonder all mixed together. Lyra laughed, the sound startling in the quiet of her apartment. "Hello," she said, her voice shaking. "Hello, little one. I've been waiting for you." The baby kicked. A real kick this time, strong enough to make Lyra jump. She laughed again, pure delight bubbling up from somewhere deep inside her. The baby kicked again and again as if it had been waiting for her to pay attention, to really acknowledge its presence. "You're strong," Lyra said, smiling through her tears. "You're so strong." She felt the fear that had lived in her chest for months begin to crack and crumble. This was not a dying baby. This was not a mistake. This was a living, moving, real child. Her child. Jake's child. A new life that had defied everyone's expectations simply by existing. Lyra stood up carefully, one hand still on her belly. She walked to the window and looked out at the stars beyond the station. Somewhere out there, Jake was racing toward her. Soon, they would be together. Soon, they would meet their baby. "We're going to be okay," Lyra said to her reflection in the window. The woman looking back at her did not look scared anymore. She looked determined, strong. "We're going to be okay." The baby kicked again and Lyra smiled. It was a real smile, the first one in months that reached all the way to her eyes. She put both hands on her belly and felt her child move beneath them, alive and well and ready to meet the world. Whatever came next, whatever challenges they faced, they would face them together, all 3 of them. Lyra walked into the medical center the next morning with her head high. Dr. Kale looked up from his data pad as she entered and his eyes widened slightly. Something in her bearing had changed. The frightened, defeated woman who had shuffled through his door for months was gone. In her place stood someone who looked ready to fight. "Good morning, Lyra," Kale said carefully. "How are you feeling?" "Better than I have in weeks," Lyra said. She sat down on the examination table without being asked. "The baby moved last night, a lot. Strong, healthy movements." Kale's expression shifted to something like surprise. "That's excellent news. We were concerned about the lack of fetal movement." "I know. I read the reports. Lyra met his eyes steadily. I want to make something clear. This is my baby, not a specimen, not an anomaly, not a hybrid experiment, my baby. And from now on, that's how you'll refer to it. Do you understand? Cale blinked. He opened his mouth, closed it, then nodded slowly. Of course. I apologize if our clinical terminology has been insensitive. It has been, Lyra said flatly. You've treated me like a problem to solve instead of a person going through something difficult. That stops today. Dr. Vera entered the room, her face set in its usual expression of disapproval. Lyra, we're medical professionals. We use proper terminology. Then find proper terminology that doesn't strip away the humanity of what's happening here. Lyra stood up, her hands on her belly. This is a baby, my baby. Yours and Jake's. A child who is going to be born soon and who deserves to be welcomed into this world with respect and care. Vera's lips pressed into a thin line. You're being emotional. I'm being a mother, Lyra corrected. There's a difference. The two doctors exchanged glances. Cale cleared his throat. Let's proceed with the examination. I assume that's why you're here. Lyra lay back on the table and let them run their scanners. She watched their faces as they reviewed the data, saw the surprise register when they detected the increased fetal movement. The baby is very active now, Kyle said, a hint of wonder in his voice. Heart rate is strong. All measurements are within healthy parameters. I told you, Lyra said. She left the medical center feeling lighter than she had in months. The fear was still there, tucked into the corners of her mind, but it no longer controlled her. The baby had moved. Her child was alive and strong and real. That was enough. Jake arrived the next day. Lyra was in her quarters when her door chimed. She opened it, and there he was, looking tired and rumpled from days of travel, his dark hair messy and his eyes shadowed with exhaustion. But when he saw her, his face lit up with such joy that Lyra felt tears spring to her eyes. Lyra, he breathed. She stepped forward and he caught her in his arms, careful of her belly between them. They held each other for a long time, not speaking, just breathing the same air and being present in the same space after months of separation. When they finally pulled apart, Jake put his hands gently on her belly. Can I feel? Lyra placed his hands where she had felt the strongest kicks. They waited. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the baby moved, a solid push against Jake's palm. His eyes went wide. Oh my God, that's our baby. That's our baby, Lyra confirmed, smiling at his expression of absolute wonder. The baby kicked again, harder this time, as if responding to its father's presence. Jake laughed, a sound of pure delight. Hello in there. I'm your dad. I've been waiting so long to meet you. The baby responded with a flurry of movements. Jake looked at Lyra with tears in his eyes. It knows me. Of course it does. I've been telling it about you every day. They spent the rest of the day together, catching up on everything that had happened during their separation. Jake told her about his fight with the captain, about the research he had done, about the medical texts and information he had brought. Lyra told him about the council, about her isolation, about the fear that had consumed her until last night. I'm here now, Jake said, holding her hand. You're not alone anymore. The next day, they met with the medical team together. Jake had brought a human doctor named Lisa Chen, who specialized in obstetrics. She was a practical woman with kind eyes who shook hands with the Velari physicians and immediately started asking questions about Lyra's care. What's the plan for delivery? Lisa asked, reviewing the medical reports on her datapad. Dr. Cale hesitated. We don't have a plan. This situation is unprecedented. We were planning to make decisions in the moment based on circumstances. Lisa frowned. That's not ideal. Let's work together on this. I have experience with complicated human births. You have knowledge of Velari physiology. Between us, we should be able to create a proper delivery plan. For the first time since Lyra's pregnancy was discovered, the medical team began working with her instead of on her. Lisa and the Velari doctor spent hours comparing notes, discussing possibilities, planning for various scenarios. They involved Lyra in every decision, explaining options and listening to her preferences. The council called a meeting. This time, Jake went with Lyra. They stood together before the 12 elders, hands clasped, united. Elder Torn studied them both with his ancient silver eyes. The human has arrived. Yes, Elder, Lyra said. And you still intend to proceed with this birth? We do, Jake said firmly. The medical team has informed us that they are now cautiously optimistic about a successful delivery. This is largely due to the collaboration with human medical professionals and the information they have provided. Torin paused. It seems your species has more experience with complicated births than ours. Humanity has had to adapt to challenging conditions, Jake said. We've learned to be flexible, creative. That's one of our strengths. Another elder spoke up. The genetic tests show that the child carries traits from both species. This has never occurred before in our recorded history. That doesn't make it wrong, Lyra said. It makes it new. New things are not always good things, but they're not always bad things either. Lyra stepped forward. Elders, I understand your concern. I understand that this challenges your traditions and beliefs. But look at what we've already learned. Human and Velari medical professionals working together, sharing knowledge, creating new solutions. That collaboration alone has value. Torin was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, You have our permission to proceed. But understand that the child's status in our society is uncertain. We will need to determine what rights and recognition it will have. That's fair, Jake said. All we ask is that you give our child a chance. 2 weeks later, Lyra went into labor. It started with mild contractions in the early morning. By noon, they were strong enough that Jake brought her to the medical center. The delivery room was ready, staffed by both Velari and human medical professionals. Lisa Chen was there, as were Kale and several other doctors Lyra had come to trust over the past weeks. The labor was long and difficult. Lyra's Velari body was not designed for the size of the hybrid baby. There were complications, moments when the monitors alarmed and doctors rushed around making quick decisions. Jake stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand, whispering encouragement. You can do this, he said over and over. You're so strong. You're amazing. Lyra clung to his words through the pain and exhaustion. She thought about the baby's first kick, about the moment everything had changed. She thought about the new life waiting to meet them. She held on to that hope and pushed when the doctors told her to push. After 16 hours of labor, the baby was born. The cry that filled the room was strong and healthy. Lyra fell back against the pillows, exhausted but alert, desperate to see her child. It's a girl, Lisa announced, smiling widely. A beautiful, healthy girl. They placed the baby on Lyra's chest. She was tiny but perfect, with skin that was a soft shade of lavender somewhere between human tan and Velari blue. Dark hair covered her head, damp and soft. When she opened her eyes, they were silver like her mother's, but the shape was human, like her father's. Hello, Nova, Lyra whispered, using the name they had chosen together. Hello, my beautiful girl. Nova looked up at her mother with alert, curious eyes. She made a small sound, not quite a cry, and Lyra felt her heart expand so much she thought it might burst. Jake leaned in, tears streaming down his face. She's perfect. She's absolutely perfect. The medical team ran their tests. Nova was healthy by all measures. Her hybrid genetics were stable. Her organs functioned properly. She had characteristics of both species working together in harmony. She was, against all odds and expectations, exactly as she should be. Word spread quickly through the station. The impossible baby had been born and she was alive and well. Some Velari still disapproved. Some still viewed Nova as an abomination, but others came to see her, drawn by curiosity that slowly transformed into wonder. When Nova was 3 days old, Elder Torin came to visit. He stood at the door of Lyra's hospital room for a long moment, just watching. Nova was awake, her silver eyes tracking the movement of shadows on the ceiling. She made soft cooing sounds that made both her parents smile. May I? Torin asked, gesturing toward the baby. Lyra hesitated, then nodded. Torin approached slowly. He looked down at Nova with an expression Lyra could not quite read. She has your eyes, he said to Lyra. And his spirit, Lyra replied, glancing at Jake. Nova reached up with one tiny hand, grasping at nothing. Torin extended his finger and Nova wrapped her hand around it, holding on with surprising strength. The ancient elder smiled, the expression transforming his severe face. She is strong, he said quietly. Perhaps there is room in the galaxy for new things after all. The medical research team made their official report to the council. Nova's hybrid genetics showed potential benefits for both species. The way her DNA combined human adaptability with Velari longevity, could help address the population decline that had plagued the Velari for generations. More importantly, her very existence proved that the boundaries between species were not as fixed as everyone had believed. The Council officially recognized Nova as a citizen of the Velari station, with full rights and protections. It was a small step, but an important one. Lyra sat in her hospital bed one evening, Nova asleep in her arms, Jake dozing in the chair beside her. Through the window, she could see the stars shining in the darkness of space. She thought about how far she had come from that first moment of fear when she learned she was pregnant. She thought about all the times she had been told this was impossible, that she was making a mistake. She looked down at her daughter's peaceful face and smiled. It was the same smile that had first appeared when Nova kicked, the smile that transformed fear into hope. Nova stirred, made a small sound, and settled back into sleep. "You're going to change everything," Lyra whispered to her daughter. "You're going to show them that different doesn't mean wrong. That impossible is just a word. That love can bridge any distance." Nova slept on, unaware of the weight of expectation and hope resting on her tiny shoulders. She was just a baby after all. Just a child who wanted to be warm and fed and loved. But she was also proof that life always found a way, even among the stars. Jake woke and looked at them, his two girls, his family. "What are you thinking about?" he asked softly. "The future," Lyra said, "and how lucky we are." "The luckiest," Jake agreed. They sat together in the quiet room, their daughter asleep between them, and watched the stars turn slowly beyond the window. Somewhere out there were other impossibilities waiting to happen, other bridges waiting to be built, other families waiting to be formed. But for now, in this moment, they had everything they needed. Nova made a soft sound in her sleep and smiled. Outside, the stars shone on,